I have a unique role at Scansource. I head both channel development as well as product marketing. So, we have a number of different channels. I'll walk you through some of them in this presentation here as we talk about some of the big problems that we're trying to solve. And, as we go through that, I'll try to answer the question, why is Scansource here? So I'll give you a little background on who Scansource is, because we are not a SaaS. We have elements of our business that incorporate a lot of SaaS, and then it's pretty cool because networking with a lot of folks, I actually know a lot of folks because through different products that we've released, we've actually done integrations to a lot of the SaaS products that we've needed, mostly for our e-commerce. But as I was preparing for this, I was talking with Dwight, and he's like, hey, you're going to have this presentation solving the big problems in distribution. And he suggested that my next slide just be 2 words, we're screwed, or something like that. So hopefully that's not the case, but I will kind of give you a quick background on who Scansource is in case you're not familiar with it, and walk through that. And there are a couple other disclaimers. These are not the only problems with distribution. There are probably a lot of different problems, and depending on what your niche is and who you're trying to go after, and how you potentially might partner up with distribution, you might uncover some other things. Definitely would love to know those, definitely want to engage in that. We're probably at the top half of the first inning on a lot of these problems, and we're identifying them kind of in real time. So as much as I'm going to present, I would love to get your feedback on this and other challenges you've uncovered, and then definitely, most importantly, it's different strategies that you might have come across through partnerships or other just experiences that you've had in terms of unlocking distribution. So Scansource is a very big company, about $3.8 billion a year. We have 2,500 people. Our ticker symbol, SCSC. If you want a hot stock tip, go ahead and buy SCSC and hold it for 10 years. So that's my get-rich-quick scheme right there. So if I do my job well, maybe in 5 or 6 years, some of these strategies are going to kick in. And ideally, very honestly, we're going to be partnering with most or all of you. I mean, that's really why we're here. We do see a real future for distribution, and specifically our ability to, because of our reach, the ability to enable the channel to go ahead and aggregate a lot of these solutions and then target them to very specific niches and really be able to go and market out the solutions that you guys spend all your time kind of driving the use cases and driving solutions into. We have channels and we have ways and routes to market to get to even very, very niche things like coffee shops in Seattle. Those sorts of things. We know the people that go in and talk to those coffee shops, and they are, selling anything from security systems to phone systems to networking equipment. And it just makes sense that if they're going in there having an infrastructure conversation, they should, and frankly, they need to evolve their talk track away from just fixed infrastructure to incorporate all the different things that those end users are trying to accomplish, typically around creating customer experiences for their end customer. So I won't go through line by line here, but we are very big in point of sale. So a lot of the point of sale systems that you see installed across the country roll through one of our distribution houses, and those are typically bought by systems integrators or in some cases large software vendors, point of sale providers. So a lot of point of sale, a lot of payments, a lot of the payment terminals that you see across the country roll through one of our warehouses. We'll do a lot of configuration on those. In some cases, we're doing the configuration of the full point of sale and the payment device. And any of you have a background in payments like I do, that's not a small task. It's actually a pretty big task. So we do a lot with barcoding, communications, a lot of the phones across the country. We're a big Polycom partner, and physical security, networking. We do about $500 million a year with Cisco. So a lot of large projects, and then a lot of just very regionalized resellers come to us and interact with us on a daily basis. Again, most of what they're buying from us right now is hardware, but we definitely know that that is shifting. And so as that's shifting, I think that kind of leads into the rest of the presentation here. So, and we have about 28,000, worldwide, about 28,000 resellers. So it's a big, big reach across the country, and it's time. We see the role that we need to play, not just in terms of treating these folks like customers and really conduits for the vendors to get hardware to flow through, but really interacting with the channel and kind of flipping our role so that we're enabling them to go and sell. And that's somewhat different for distribution. Some folks have tried, some do better than others. Our goal is to be great. Okay, so the first problem that we see, and it's not going to seem like a problem, but it is a problem if your traditional role as a reseller is you have a domain expertise around, let's say, communications or point of sale. You have domain expertise, and a lot of that expertise is about fitting hardware. You kind of start with a core software solution, point solution, and then you're building infrastructure around that. And you get paid a lot of your margin. It comes from your knowledge of the hardware pieces and fitting those together and driving those, on site or doing massive rollouts across. Like, your thing is like really tactile in terms of how you make your money. So, so you don't view the world in terms of the software-driven ecosystem. You think of it as like a reseller-driven ecosystem. And honestly, as the size of the users get bigger and the infrastructure gets bigger, you kind of become a slave to your infrastructure. But I think what we've seen over the last 20 years, more and more and faster, is that, software all the innovation is happening at the software layer. And so it's happening faster and faster. And when you have a distributed network of all these resellers, it's harder for them to enable technology because they have to go and learn all these things. And it really comes down to the interoperability. What works with what? That's a tough thing when you're in the reseller because you get very, very good at installing kind of niche-based solutions. And if you have to do a new one, you go learn all about that new thing you had to do. But knowing, does Ring Central, for instance, work with my point of sale? What does that mean? Well, if somebody calls up, if a customer calls up to order a pizza and you've got a chain of 50 pizza stores, can the attendant who picks up the phone see through caller ID and pull up the whole history of that customer? If they can sell 5 more things. If they can't, they just have to go scroll through or, they're gonna just take a transaction. They're not turning that into any more value add. So it's those kinds of things that the end users are looking for. And in some cases, the end users are dependent on those types of solutions. And it requires you knowing, does this solution work with that solution? Or can it work, and what work needs to be done? So a couple of these other things too is that when you have a software-driven ecosystem, and this is just true in technology, software is really about creating user experiences. And I think that's a lot of times the reseller, what they're doing is they're implementing technology and they're trying to achieve a functionality. But we all know that the core of everything, and we heard about from Cassie earlier today, how much effort it takes to really build good user experiences. Resellers aren't set up to do that. And we think in the distribution role, even though it's sort of outside our purview, that's where we need to get to. And in some cases, we're probably going to have to be the ones because we have knowledge across all the different solutions. We have insight into interoperability. We're probably going to have to take a lot more of the heavy lifting and create those user experiences, either for the reseller or for the end user that the reseller can access and provide to their customers. So lot to be discovered there. And then there's this other thing that we're just getting our heads around, which is vertical wisdom. That's really understanding what is the environment. What is the environment of a coffee shop? What is the environment of, and I apologize, my background is more point of sale, so I go to that. I go to sort of the stores and the merchants, but they're good use cases because we probably interact with them on a daily basis. So what is the vertical wisdom? What are the things that really need to be present in that environment for that merchant or that end user to thrive? So those all present things. Then the second thing that's sort of a problem is, and this is just sort of a human thing, selling different is tough. It's really tough to evolve your business model. When you're going from a Capex heavy install, making most of your margin on the install or the upfront revenue, and you've got your sales reps trained to do that, you've got your supply chain set up kind of in that fashion, to go and figure out when is this inflection point? If you do it too early, you could run risk of going out of business or alienating your customers or alienating your employees. So this is just sort of a thing. And so some of the things that we're working on are, we're really trying to digest, how do we help our channels, and they come in all different shapes and sizes, 28,000 of them. How do we help them start this process? And in a lot of cases, it's a very human thing. So one of the strategies that we have is actually, if we go back to the previous slide, it's those user experiences. A lot of times when you go as a reseller, when you go to buy something, part of your value that you provide to your customers is that you are very technical, or you can go and figure complex things out. A lot of the B2B user interfaces carry that same thing. It's like, hey, if you're smart enough to figure out how to place an order with us, well then, hey, good luck. Then you actually might have a business. And I think we're seeing that shift. When you really want to start helping people make the shift, and we see this every day and from all the different apps that we use on our phone, those user experiences are one where you can start to get comfortable, like, okay, it is pretty easy. Okay, I can buy some Bitcoin. That seems like this crazy thing, but actually I download the app and press a few buttons, put my card in there. All right, I think I'm good. So that's just one strategy. We also know that this also just takes time. There's repetition. We've seen this a lot in payments. Payments is, folks get very dialed into one talk track. And for them to expand and start to incorporate, when they go in with a talk track and they're like, hey, we're gonna save you money, save you money, save you money, and they do that for years, it's hard to get them to start adding, well, hey, I could add value to your transaction, or I could add value to your business. And a lot of times, that just takes time. So there's a cultivation effort. I loved Jim's presentation that we just watched. There was so many things in that. I was like, yeah, we've done that. We've done that. We did it at a small scale in the payments world. We're trying to take some of those strategies. We actually did some Slack integration. We actually have partners where we have integrations on Slack, and we do kind of real-time solutioning of customers, whether it's in the sales process or in the support process. So, you know, some of those things, some of those integrations, again, those are user experiences. Those are ways that we can help facilitate this. I'll keep going on here. One problem, and this is a strength and a weakness. A lot of these things that I've kind of said are big problems. They're strengths and their weaknesses. Just in our database, this isn't industry-wide, just in our database, across the world, we've got 28,000 resellers that, for the most part, are hardware customers of us. But we flipped that thinking a little bit, and we're now seeing them as routes to market. So the fact that they're regional and distributed, if you're trying to get your innovative technology, and I've had 3 conversations this morning with different folks that have this struggle. They have this new innovative product, they have this great use case, strong ROI, and it's hard to get it out to market through a channel. It's hard to get it through to the people who are having the conversations with the end user because they're all over the place. They're like physically, they're all over the place. And so when you have something new, it's hard to get that message because it's basically, you got to go through 28,000 conversion cycles. And we all know if somebody wants to resell something, it's not they just have to learn about it. They have to internalize it and go and like build a program around it and really digest it. So in terms of that is an issue. But it is a value in that they are talking to the end user. They're distributed. They're not in a central call center. They're actually physically talking to the end users. So we're going to spend a lot of time on this. How do we get these folks? And it incorporates some of the concepts from the other slides. But how do we get these distributed folks to consume information and figure out, hey, this is an innovative thing that applies directly to a use case of an end customer that I'm working with right now. Wait, if I can do that, we can actually make this go faster. That's sort of the true test. If Scansource, me, our team, whatever, if we can accomplish that, you know, we'll see that stock price probably go up pretty fast. I won't spend a ton of time on this, but you know, this has been hit, I think, year after year. But there is sort of a migration of Capex to Opex, and it usually comes down to folks that are used to building expertise around on-premise systems and then migrating those to the cloud. It's not, you know, in some cases you could argue that things were in the cloud 15 years ago. It's partially true, but in general, when a lot of our resellers think of their next customer, their default is on-premise. We want to migrate them to cloud. but that takes time. All right, wanted to give, Sunir saw these and he was like, dude, these are way, way too high level. Like, you gotta give some people some real stories. So what is working? Again, like I was saying, we're at the early stages of this. So we're still figuring these things out. There's a lot of work to be done, but some of the things that are working is deep pockets work. So, you know, we all know Microsoft has probably been the most successful at driving the channel and getting the channel to start selling SaaS-based products. In the point of sale world, one thing that you might not realize, but it's kind of cool, it's kind of a cool use story or use case is Clover, owned by First Data. First Data, until just recently, was the largest payment processor in the US, maybe even in the world. And they bought this company here in the Bay Area called Clover a few years ago, retooled it, and you know, frankly, they were just big, and they came out with a strong strategy, and they got their networks, primarily it was ISOs and agents and then banks, they got them to resell it. And in 5 years, they've achieved over 5% market share with SMBs. It's a little bit under the radar because it's not as prominent as, you know, some big Toshiba system or IBM and some of these traditional players, but they've actually been very, very successful at getting that out to market. So it does help to be big, does help to have deep pockets and force it. But I do think there's a silver lining there in that as some of these bigger players invest in the channel and they invest in getting SaaS-based products out there and SaaS-based platforms that actually put Clover more as a platform similar to Shopify, as that starts to happen, I think what we're gonna see is it's gonna become more and more feasible and probably more demanded by the end customer and more part of the thought process for the resellers that are out there talking to them to start bringing SaaS into and not just think on-premise first, but actually start thinking, hey, what should I be doing to migrate my business model and my customers' infrastructure to the cloud? So those are a couple things that are working. We've also seen that, and we've seen this because in some cases we've failed, but you gotta do cultivation. One of the things that really works is cultivation. So when you get a partnership, when you get a program, it sounds simple, but actually you need to dedicate time and you need to dedicate resource to actually nurturing these programs, and you gotta do it over a long haul. You can't do a 3-month campaign and expect, oh yeah, people got it. They don't got it. They might get it for one deal, and then they'll go away and they'll go back to what they're used to. So that's, we've seen a lot of cases what's not working. What we have experienced that's not working, unfortunately, is it is very hard to switch a sales motion from cost savings to value add. And you know, I would love your thoughts on that because that's gonna be a big one for us. That's a very tough switch for, and it's not just the salesperson. The salesperson is sort of like the last mile. That's like the person that's having the conversation, but it's everybody behind that, the whole support infrastructure, sales engineering, the way that they, you know, even what products they put on the line card. That is a tough one. When it's all about, I'm gonna come in and save you money, and a lot of what you have some of that in SaaS, but a lot of it is about being able to do more with less, being more efficient, opening up new opportunities. So that's definitely something that's not quite working. All right, so those were sort of some of the big problems that I had, but I am very, very open, as I said at the beginning, very open to your all's perspective on this because this is, we're at the beginning, but we're very excited about it. We've got a team. It is also unique too, one thing, it's not probably common for a distribution company to start investing or like they have over the past, as Scansource has over the past few years, at really investing in routes to market and also starting to invest in the technology layer and really getting familiar with a lot of you all and some of the services you provide and looking at you and saying, hey, maybe there's ways we can partner. Yes, in some cases we're going to even be customers of yours, or we can share, share go-to-market activities, or there's other ways that we can integrate. And so we're open to all of those. So thank you, everybody.
Kevin? Oh, I'm on. Questions from the audience for Kevin? Okay, Kevin, you had the slide up there around one thing that got me thinking was the regionally and kind of just like the regional and the distribution challenge, sorry. For the folks in the room, you're obviously trying to tackle it, you're looking at it. How can we kind of learn from how Scansource are thinking about it? Because I'm sure most people in the room are, being challenged by it. So could you give a little bit of advice of how we should be thinking about overcoming that particular challenge?
Yeah, definitely. So, well, one thing that we've seen is that the advantages that they're distributed, so they're close to the end users, and they have a lot of influence over what gets sold. But they're obviously reticent to sell something, especially when it's not in their wheelhouse. It's not something they've sold before. So, and we're experimenting on this where we're coming out with programs that have sort of mixed models, where part of the solution, they're buying it from us. It might be a hardware component with a little bit of programming, and they're buying from us and they're marking it up. But the other part to complete it might be referral based, where they have to refer to us and we'll sell with. That's probably an important point because we are looking at a lot of ways where we can sell with and then support with. And I think that distribution's role has to expand. It can't be simply just, hey, we're going to bring in inventory and have a deep line card. We actually have to know what's going to happen to that when it lands on the end user's counter or the end user's warehouse.
That's interesting, as you said, two different ways of thinking about it in terms of sell with and support with. How is that different to, like, what are the different conversations then you start to have around those two other ways of working together rather than just the way you've traditionally worked with these distributors?
Well, one real simple thing is having a sales rep simply ask, where are we going to ship this? Not the physical address, but like what environment are you selling into? And then the other thing that we have to do, and this is where some of the heavy lifting comes in, you have to almost build and we're just getting good at this or just getting decent at it, we have ways to go to get great at it, is really building, when we have that map, building out the whole ecosystem. And we've had to do this in the payments world because oftentimes I mentioned payments can be confusing. Oftentimes when we send out a Verifone terminal that's programmed, let's say, to send their transaction to First Data, well, that's going to have a point of sale ISV incorporated. It's probably going to have a gateway, and there's probably going to be some sort of encryption middleware that's happening too.
And shameless plug, it uses the AppDirect platform to power that.
Exactly.
Keep going.
So what happens is if something goes wrong, that's potentially 5 or 6 different entities' fault, but nobody knows really whose that is. And the worst thing you can do is tell the end user, well, it's not our fault. Because guess what? All 6 people are going to say it's not our fault. It's got to be one of the other 5. So we've kind of taken on this role, and we're starting to invest in some technology where we can sort of quarterback. We call it quarterbacking the situation. That's more on the support side, but that's going to be a key strategy for us over the next few years.
Yeah, no, it's as you were talking, and then the Verifone example is particularly true. Is that's how they have considered more ways that they can leverage their kind of ecosystem, but also continue to add value add, particularly for their distributors, by pulling all those things together, leveraging AppDirect to kind of use that seamless deployment down to the device and continue to scale their business that way. So, lovely. Any final questions? Okay. Well, could we all thank Kevin from Scansource, please, for me?
Thank you.